So he's been trying to escape extradition from Colorado. We've found him. He's in Buenos Aires in Argentina. Interpol are hot on his tail for all the transfer rumors he's been leaking out that violate all these non-disclosure agreements he's been signing. But we've finally caught him. It's Richard at Sorare USA. Richard, thanks a lot for joining us, my man. It's been forever.
It has. Oh my goodness. And yeah, don't say that too loud where I am. Buenos Aires is a big city, so we're good on this for now. But yeah, it's been 2 weeks now in Argentina. Absolutely incredible. Already been to 2 River Plate matches. Just great times out here. And yeah, it feels like it has been a year, I guess. So yeah, it feels longer than that. It feels like a lifetime.
That was big time, man. Like me, you, and John got together last year to do some MLS stuff, and like for like the longest time last year, unfortunately, because I was like between like the cupboard and then a real life, a job and stuff, that it's collabing and getting together with people, time zones. It's just so difficult. But now, thankfully, I can be much more flexible and have people like yourself come in and enlighten myself and everyone watching as often as possible. So I really appreciate you taking time out your vacation to come and hang out with me for a while. So thanks very much, man.
I mean, this is what I want to be doing. Like, wake up, go to a cafe, have a little coffee, have some food, talk to Quinny. This is like the ideal day. This is
Love it, man.
That's what dreams are made of.
You're far too kind. Well, I'm just as excited as you. We're getting ready for what's my 3rd season of MLS on Sorare, and was going to be your 2nd, so we've got tons to get stuck into today. We don't really have a set structure. We'll just talk about these teams or these players. We're just going to go all across the table and just kind of see what kind of falls out. Is there anything? I think let's start with Colorado, your team, right? So we were talking about this before we hit the record button, but last year it felt like they were building almost like a Bayern Munich-esque MLS team. They were just scooping up better players from around the league and amalgamating them in. And that's kind of been their strategy for the last few years. But the Mark Anthony Kaye signing was really like a headline grab, But in the off-season this year, Kellen Acosta's went to LA. So it feels like that was almost like a swap almost. And also Cole Bassett's went to Feyenoord. How are you feeling about the Rapids going into this season?
I mean, so it's kind of in any other preseason, I would be, they've retained a good amount of their talent. Yes, they got rid of Acosta, which if you look at the swap with K, I think they came out slightly ahead. So they basically traded Acosta for K and then something. So that's decent business. But yeah, it's been such a crazy offseason. I mean, like you said, so many transfers. MLS has been spending, I think they're the 5th highest spenders in the past offseason globally. So that's a massive change.
Wow.
You have names Insigne, Douglas Costa, like the people are coming to MLS, Cara. And so yeah, given that, the Rapids, who have not really, they bought Max from Brazilian side, but that's like the only big signing so far. And so given that, not feeling too great. But we'll see. That's the love of it. You never know what's going to happen once it actually starts. But yeah.
Well, the big thing about the Rapids over the last like season and a half, 2 seasons, depending on how you want to look at the after COVID year, is one of the best teams in the league for points per game. Over the last 2 years, of a very efficient outfit, very consistent with the manager and the play style and all that kind of thing. So they're one of these teams, Colorado. There's a bunch of them in MLS that are like, they could do anything. They could make the playoffs with ease, or they might have a bit of a fight in their hands and have to crawl across the line at the last match or two. And I think we've
Yeah.
seen that last year. They were just so consistent.
And they do it without, splashing out. Even I think last year they didn't have any of like the big name, like designated player signings, that types of players that New York would have, that LAFC would have. And, it's been, I think Robin Fraser I'm not sure which, like his 4th or 5th season now, might be high, but basically he's had time to now implement his style. And it is, despite, Stan, was it Kroenke, the little owner who's,
Yep.
Rather not known for, let's just say successful teams, if you count Arsenal. Okay, LA Rams are in the Super Bowl, but yeah, it's just despite not spending, they've kind of found their little way of finding success, which as a Rapids fan, historically, this is great. It's a good, time to be a Rapids fan, but it always feels rather uncertain until the results start rolling in to be at least.
For sure. And the one thing I think about the Rapids when I'm kind of thinking about the last 2 years or so, been a real big onus on homegrown talent in America that go on to get exported. And, the Rapids, they don't really get the headlines that, Dallas and a few of these other clubs have been picking up recently. But, you know, midway through last season, Sam Vines goes to Belgium. Austin Trusty signed to go to Arsenal in the off-season. Cole Bassett's went to Feyenoord. There's a lovely little production line from that academy coming out now.
Absolutely. And there's more in there's more to come basically because they've have really strong academy. Like, I mean, given I grew up in Colorado, you kind of see like I don't want to call it soccer culture, but there's tons of like talented players. There's tons of infrastructure. Colorado's a great place to do outdoor sports most of the year. Got a lot of sunshine. So yeah, I'm, and the way they play, they also give these young players a chance, which I think is key in MLS. Certain teams, like I'm gonna call it Minnesota here, but like if you're a young player in Minnesota, not the best place to be quite honest. Adrian Heath, very, very different philosophy there. So it's good.
Yeah.
It's a good mix.
It's night and day for sure. I always think Colorado is a cold place. I don't know why. Is it mountainous? Is that why I think
It's
that?
yes, it's cold, but also it's clear. So, it could
Okay.
be 0 Celsius, but you'll have blue skies and sunshine. So in that sense, I think they advertise like 300 days of sunshine every year. That's kind of like the tourism board. Uh, but it checks out. The
Yeah,
geography really plays to that. And then altitude training, you know, must
yeah,
count for
big
something.
time. Oh, big. That's one thing that again, anyone who's not familiar with it, especially NFL, there MLS, I beg your pardon, is home field advantage does really kick in quite a lot because of the away travel that has to be done, but also there's so many climates for home teams to occupy, like altitude or cold, heat, different other things. And Rapids have always got a really strong home performance. On that kind of note you were saying there with the academy, is there anyone that you're looking at for this year? Maybe they've got a card or maybe they don't, that you're thinking maybe this kid's going to get some minutes this year, maybe make a name for himself?
Yeah, I mean, less so from the academy specifically now, but if you're talking about Sorare, I think Keita, the young center back they signed from Columbus, given
Okay.
Trusty's gonna likely be gone by, let's say, June, July, unless he gets loaned back, which we don't know at this point, but he'll be there till that time, and so there will be a spot in the back three. And, in limited time in Columbus, he's been doing very, very well. And then beyond that, I mean, they've got a pretty strong, just looking at the depth chart here, they got a pretty strong first 11, but there's guys like Darren Yapi, Sebastian Anderson, who are I think they're still in their teens, honestly. But once they get a chance, injuries happen. They'll be, we only have, I believe, 5 midweek matches this year in MLS, given the World Cup. And so there's not going to be too much, well, hopefully, too much rotation there, but, you know, the, they'll find ways to get the minutes. And so definitely something to keep eyes on. Like yeah, lots to monitor.
And forgive me if I'm totally, don't know, forgive me if I'm wrong with this, but with the introduction of Charlotte, bringing it up to an even number of teams, there's been a wee bit of conference reconfiguration. Is Colorado one of the teams that's changed conference this year? No, it's
No, so they're in the West still, but Nashville is the one that moved from the East to the West.
Nashville. Is that what it
And
was?
they
Yeah.
basically, I mean, Nashville is its own very interesting topic. I feel like we talked a good amount about Nashville last year, given they had that very interesting start of the long stretch of home games. And I think we
Yeah.
were talking about picking up Willis, talking about Leal, and then Mukhtar,
Zimmerman. Well, yep.
Mukhtar and Zimmerman. Yeah, those are Mukhtar is the one that got away. But yeah,
Big
this
time.
year is basically the opposite for them. So if you look at a map of the U.S., Nashville is the most eastern team that plays in the West. So it means a lot of travel for them, and they actually start out with a long string of away games, essentially. Trips to
Stadium
Portland, trips to
related, I think,
Seattle.
isn't it?
Yeah, and so just one thing to keep in mind as you're building out and starting out the
Yeah, for sure.
season.
Definitely raises a lot of question marks around Nashville because what a lot of people will do, I think we're all guilty of this when it comes to surveyors, we look at previous statistics and form and all that kind of stuff and then try and extrapolate what might happen in the future. But Nashville is such a change of situation. And it's a really young club anyway at the best of times. It's hard to forecast some of these situations. But I thought it was, I don't know why, but when I was looking at the table, I was thinking, were Colorado in the West last year? But no, you're right, it is Nashville that have moved over.
Yeah, Nashville is, I mean, not to jump ahead, they're one of the most interesting teams and like in terms of the strategy they've deployed, right? Like Colorado, yes, not many big names, kind of built on youth, but Nashville, they've traded away a bunch of their international player slots for, imaginary MLS currency. But then basically I don't think it's been done at this like rate before, right? So that gives them a lot more flexibility in terms of signing players that are not on the top end, but kind of like that, roster spots 12 through 15 perhaps. And, you know, usually there's a value to internationals players because you have a much bigger market. But if they manage to fill that with good domestic talent, that could be one of the first, like, they're zigging when everybody else is zagging. And I'm very, very curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, and the thing with Nashville as well, like because a lot of the players are very well priced because of their performance last year, like you say, the most Eastern team in the West, number one, and then number two, long string of away matches. There could be an opportunity for folk after game 4 or something like that when they're stinking, um, and you maybe catch a lot of these prices, maybe getting a bit of a haircut to maybe come in and get these guys maybe a bit cheaper than what you will before the season begins potentially. So that's an interesting angle for all those at home to consider for sure.
Yeah, I think
When it
around
comes
week
to the
five or
West,
six.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, just week 5 or 6, I think, is when it like kind of turns because they're opening a new stadium May 1st.
Yeah, May
So
1st, is it?
then you get that
Mark that in the
wave.
calendars. Yeah, because when I look at the West, it's for me the West is always the most exciting conference. It's normally where the bigger players reside. It's where the kind of household names are typically, And as we know over the course, teams like Seattle have, always been in finals and getting far in the playoffs. Same as Portland, Kansas have got a good history of that, as do the Galaxy and one or two others. But as I kind of cast my eye across the conference, you know, I would look at this and think, RSL, the Quakes, the Dynamo are probably the weakest of the bunch here. But even in it's not as if they're going to be absolute pushovers. RSL made the semi-finals last year. So the thing with MLS is taking people on face value doesn't really get you that far, unfortunately.
It's true, yeah. I mean, RSL was like the underdog story. And you have characters like David Ochoa who kind of really play into that. MLS
Yep.
needs a villain, right? And so I think he's up there in terms of, getting close to that. The comments, the, clap, just yeah, he's an entertaining guy, let's put it that way. And so yeah, you never know, honestly. Austin's also kind of like, it's their second year. They've made some good roster improvements, but yeah, what does that shake out as if you compare to, the Seattle, the Kansases, the Portlands, and even the LA teams are always, you know, strong. And so it's a tough league, put that way.
Well, I managed to watch Austin myself, I think once or twice last year. I wasn't too often. And again, me and you were chatting about this before coming on, but I thought Pochettino was by far and away, like, obviously they signed Druise and they've got Ring, they've got some good players there, But for me, Pochettino was the most exciting piece that they had, and he's now went to River Plate. So as I'm kind of looking at their roster now, I don't really know about if this is completely accurate, but I do feel like they're a bit thin in the middle of the pitch, in terms of head count. Still got
Yeah,
Diego Fagundes, who's a bit more of a playmaker. Druisi is, of course, the high profile forward from Zenit. Ring's been there and done it. And then you've got guys in defence like Besler, who's like a veteran, but he's 34. I don't really. And Brad Struver, of course, made a bit of a name for himself on SO5 last year because of the amount of saves he was forced to make every game all season.
yeah, I think it'll be the
For some of
same.
these younger,
Yeah, you basically same thoughts, same thoughts. Like in the middle, it's almost like a vacuum, right? Like you have Tarusi, GTA. I don't think he has a card on Sorare yet, but he's kind of like their like furthest player forward. He's helped a lot in the second half of the season. But then yeah, Pochettino, he's been great at River Plate, given the 2 games I've watched. But you kind of have to ask yourself what happened there. And then I believe Valencia is kind of like the new number 8, number 6. So there's a little bit of improvement, and they signed Felipe yesterday. But yeah,
I've seen that.
uh,
Felipe Martins.
yeah, quite the journey, man. Honestly, he's been all over.
You can say that again. So what I'm trying to get my head around, Richard, when I'm kind of looking, particularly the West, because I think the West is probably where most people who don't know much about MLS will start to look at first. You know, they'll recognise Galaxy, they'll recognise Seattle probably. Um, Maybe the Timbers come into that. LAFC, of course, quite high profile. Um, but the thing that I've noticed with MLS in particular over the last 3 seasons on Sorare is there's if you can focus on 2 or 3 little clubs, and I say little, I don't mean that in a bad way, you know, but just not the ones that have got the profile as such. There's always like good opportunities to be picking up, like an Austin Trusty from Colorado, or you know, like Hani Mukhtar from Nashville. These kind of things, because all the teams, and it's funny because I don't know if you've seen this. It came out yesterday. It was like an internal shot of Charlotte's changing room. Did you see that? It was on
Yeah, all the
Charlotte's
renovations,
Twitter
right?
or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Got a glimpse of
Wow.
that.
Wow. What facilities they've got, eh? And you know, me being, you know, not native to America, I hear, oh, Charlotte are getting MLS franchise. And I think, Charlotte, of all the places, you know, it doesn't, but if you actually look into the demographics, I heard this somewhere, but Charlotte, Cincinnati is 2 of the biggest markets for soccer in terms of viewership in America. You know, so it's a massive, potentially massive home crowd that they're going to be bringing in. Do you have much hope for Charlotte this year? What do you think they'll be like?
I do I'll put a disclaimer on that. Essentially, the way they seem to be taking a very if Nashville is very much on the spectrum of like domestic, we're going, keep scouting the US, maybe North America. Charlotte's like on the opposite end. They've gone very internationally focused, right? They've already sold McGree for a profit, hasn't even played a minute, which, only in
Yeah.
MLS. But they've made some pretty like sharp signings. The coaching team, just reading the quotes on Twitter from players, the way they seem to have a very specific style they want to play. Um, and seems like the players are picking up on that. And so in terms of all the expansion teams, it's never easy. However, to me, it seems like they have a plan in place, put it that way, right? Whereas like previously, like Cincinnati, uh, there are a lot of like questions being asked, when they came into the league, like what are they trying to do here? Miami, very similar. So Charlotte definitely stands above that, to me at least. What that looks like on the field, that's to be seen. I think there'll be some like, growing pains initially at least. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because like the East for me is like a real converse to what you get in the West. Like the East is like there's like almost all of these clubs, with the odd exception for me, there are very much the same. You know, there's not that many like. Sure, the Revs really dominated over the last year and a bit. So did Philly, I suppose. New York, of course, won the thing last year. Atlanta, we expect to be a powerhouse. But in the reality, in Columbus Crew won it recently as well. But in reality, all of these teams, none of them like dominate. They're all very much like you have to get quite lucky with guys staying fit, fixture list going a bit favourable for you, that sort of thing. Cincinnati and Miami are probably the most interesting ones I think to have a look at, because like Cincinnati have been picking up wooden spoons like they're going out of fashion, you know, since they've come into the league, and they've just appointed the assistant from Philadelphia and the director of football from Philly. Do you think we'll see an instant impact from that kind of changing culture, or do you think that will take a bit of time?
It's a good question. I think if we go back to last year, we watched this exact video. Uh, I'll, there was lots of optimism in the room, and one of the
Of
things I've
course.
learned over the last year is to, kind of temper that down a little bit. Like you want to be in the middle between like super optimistic, like yes, Cincinnati's going to make playoffs, and obviously not. Like I think there's somewhere in between, which is a lame answer, I know. But last year I was super optimistic on DC, for example, right? They were rebuilding, and they've certainly made improvements. I think if you look at like the expected goal differential, they're actually third in the league last year. Didn't quite shake out that way in the actual table. However, that's progress. So I think Cincinnati could, if things go well, maybe they'll end up in a similar spot where they make improvements to their playing style. Defense gets a little bit tighter. They gave up so many goals last year; it was ridiculous. They actually start winning at home because they opened a new stadium and then basically did worse there than they did on the road, which that's a huge outlier, right? So things like that.
Big time.
Yeah, add Jim Curtin to the mix. That should Brenner year two, a little bit. Now he's like climbing into MLS. The signs are there. Would I say to make playoffs? Probably not. That'd be my
I
like
agree with that.
gut feeling right now. Just because there's so much, like you mentioned, right? Like it's less like the LAFC or Seattle's that you have like the powerhouse teams. Um, but you have teams like New York City FC, always like they're very good. Philadelphia, they retained most of their squad, very, very good. And then yeah, the Orlando, the Atlanta, kind of like the other New York team, Columbus, Nashville, New England,
The
like
other New York team.
the other New York team.
The
I'm
other New
sorry, I'm
York team that
sorry.
we will not name.
You're a New
We
York
will
City
not name
fan,
them.
right? You're a City fan. I see a City jersey back there, so we'll keep it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
I
And
didn't say the New
on
Jersey
that
team.
note, in fact, that would have been cheeky. Yeah, the New Jersey Bulls. But actually, I've ended up. Lewis Morgan's just went to the Red Bulls. He was very good on Sorare in his first season in Miami, and then last year Miami were just an absolute dumpster fire. So there was just no joy coming out there. I'm quietly confident. I think the Bulls will like be better this year than last. I don't think that's a real stretch, of course, but the thing with we're talking about playing styles and stuff like that. Red Bull all across the world has got a very clear, defined sort of playing style. And when you look at their roster, guys like Sean Nealis, obviously I just mentioned Morgan, but then there's other guys like John Tolkien. They're keeping Caden Clark on loan, I think, as well, aren't they? From Leipzig. And then they've got other guys floating about like Frankie Amaya, Drew Yearwood, Patrick Kamala, Daniel Royer. There's some really good players in that team. But unfortunately, they just really never hit their straps last year. But to most outsiders, they're definitely one of the bigger names in MLS. Do you think the form that they showed last year, they can improve on that from this year?
Yeah, you mentioned about a lot of like the good like young players. Like they have a good core, right? And very
Yep.
similar, like good academy. And then Aaron Long, he is now coming back. He was
Of
already like
course.
U.S. national team, and he's not sure he won like the Defender of the Year title like officially, but he's always in the mix of that conversation, right? Like one of the best, I want to say like Hedges, Zimmerman style defenders. U.S. grown, played most of his life in MLS, and absolutely solid. And so between that and specifically on Lewis Morgan, I think what happened in Miami is they started playing him as a wing back essentially, right? So they moved him out of that attacking spot kind of more defensively, which given his cards of midfielders that didn't do well in SO5. And so that's actually one of the things to keep an eye out. I haven't actually seen a preseason lineup for New York Red Bulls, but um, the rumors were that they would put Morgan back into a more attacking position. In which case, yeah, absolutely, like that should be a big improvement.
That's the thing I always have confidence with Red Bull players or Red Bull acquisitions is they're a very Moneyball play by numbers kind of setup. So they won't be buying Morgan for the numbers he did last season at Miami. They'll be buying the Morgan's numbers from the season prior to that. And I'm sure that they had those conversations with him. As like, Lewis, we are going to play you in an attacking position. We expect you to get 5, 6, 8, 10 assists and a couple of goals, yada yada. And we're going to facilitate you to do that by playing you in this position next to this guy. That's really how they work. So transfers like that always raise my attention because you can quickly see a guy who's been left for dead, who's like cheap as chips because everyone thinks he's rubbish, but put into the right situation by a club that knows where the best talent or where the best attributes for the player is. You can quickly see a mad turnaround. Aaron Long's a great example. I forgot all about him because of his injury, but you'll remember as well, right before the injury, there was really strong rumours that he was going to Liverpool as a fill-in player for injuries.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
I had
do
no
I
idea.
remember it was like I think it
That's
was like a
crazy.
loan or something like that. It was linked to
Wow.
Liverpool. I think it was yeah, like Van Dijk was injured and I think something was
Oh,
going on and it might have just been paper talk or agents or whatever, but he was getting these Liverpool links and then who did they actually bring in the end? Oh, it was they brought in a guy from the Championship, a centre back. I want to say Pearson or something. They brought a guy in and anyway, then Long got injured. So he's definitely a guy that has good enough statistics to grab, the attention of these other teams. Even, their intention was just to loan him for 6 months to fill in a gap for injuries. But even at that, at this level to show those sort of statistics, those sort of attributes that the elite level might see a bit of value in. Gives you a bit of credibility when you're looking at a guy if they've had those links. Like Luciano Costa, not to go back to Cincinnati, but when he was at DC, you'll remember this better than anyone. He was linked to PSG and all these kind of places, you know?
Yep. It was and it was almost like they had almost an agreement, and then something happened last minute. We backed out, and then ended up going to Mexico. But yeah, he was pretty good for given how bad Cincinnati was, right? To your point of
Yeah.
like kind of like the talisman of the team. He's definitely in that like Drusi, Lacosta, um, Mukhtar, that type of category as well, which there's value to be had there, I think.
Yeah. And again, like, as I'm kind of casting my eye up and down the Eastern Conference, I think a lot of these teams are coming into this season in a really stable position. You mentioned DC earlier. DC were one of the talks of the town last year with Hernan Losada, just playing crazy formations, all gung-ho kind of football. And they really went for it, didn't they? It did feel like they burned out a little bit, but I expect them to improve this season coming in from last. Would you be the same?
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. It might just be because like underlying like I hate to bring up the underlying like expected numbers and all that, but they stood out massive outlier there, honestly. One of like super good goal differential. And then yeah, Ola Kamara last season, like 19 goals. I think we touched on
Yeah,
him
didn't beat
last
it.
year. Did not expect that, honestly. It's funny, right? Because you can see the players that you sold in the past and just scrolling through the accepted offers. I had two Jesus Ferreiras going into last season, had Ola Kamara. These were all gone. They were all gone by early July or early June for me. I think Jesus Ferreira had like a shoulder injury. Kamara, I was like, he also had some type of injury. And so, like I said, like lots of lessons learned from last year. And then specifically on Kamara, there was rumors they're trying to trade him. They're now signed two forwards. They had, what's it, Taxi, the guy from, was he from Rapid Wien? No, Vienna. But basically, they signed two forwards. One's about to be announced, I think, this week. The other one. So where does he end up? Does he end up in DC? Wouldn't really make sense to me because they have Nigel Roberta as well. They have so many forwards. Um,
Yeah,
so
I say that transfer has definitely escaped me. But if we're
yeah,
talking, just looking at DC again, because a lot of people that will be coming to watch the video are similar to us. We love a wee bit of U23 action. We love some up and coming kids. And Kevin Paredes has obviously just left DC. He's went to Wolfsburg, amazing transfer, but still in their ranks. They've got guys like Moses Nyman and Griffin Yao who definitely good get a good profile by the league experts, if you like. But one player I'm looking at for this year at DC is a rookie card I picked up by the name of Giovanni Bolivar. So I was listening to a Hernan Losada interview last year on Extra Time Radio, I think they call it, MLS Extra Time, the podcast. And he was saying that Giovanni Bolivar, like, they really, really like him, and they put him out on loan to like their feeder team, the level below kind of thing. So I'm hoping to maybe see a wee bit of him next year. Otherwise, I've not got much of a DC presence. But they do have the point of me bringing this up is they do have some good kids in there. If you're looking for some U23 action, guys that could really pop up and cause a bit of a stir in that region, particularly Griffin Yao and Moses Nyman.
yeah, I think the East has a good amount of those teams where the U23, if you want to like fully, if you were to want to fully stack them up, you have the choice, like DC being one of them. Yeah, Bolivar is barely 20, just super under the radar. And then
Yeah,
also
well, see, I'd never.
Chicago. Yeah.
So on Chicago, right? I'm glad you said this. I didn't
Oh
want to
no.
bring them up, right? They have
Uh-oh.
absolutely cut themselves loose and they're just shelling everyone out the door. You know, it feels
Yeah.
like Aliceda's out, Madran's out. And I'm not even too sure who their bloody manager is anymore either, to be honest with you, because they got rid of, was it Wiki, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
Ezra Hendrickson is, I think he's been around the organization for a while. Like,
oh,
people were happy about that, so take that for what it's worth.
okay. Yeah, sure. Um, But so Chicago, like last year, were like really sketchy. Of course, the main story that came out of Chicago was Slonina, the
Yep.
U23 wonder kid keeper. It's linked to Juventus and all the big teams in Europe. Thankfully for Chicago and Sorare players, he's not left. He's still there. The window's
Right.
closed. No one came in for him. So he is such hot property now. But he was so unexpected last year. in terms of coming to prominence. No one's seen it coming whatsoever. And
Mhm.
it just goes to show you MLS clubs. I've seen this as somebody else, Richard. You could probably back me up on this. Because MLS clubs don't have the fear of relegation, you get such exciting dynamics coming out. You know, they can't just say, excuse my language, but they can't just go, fuck it. We're putting the 17-year-old in goals. That's what we're doing. We can't get relegated. What we got to lose, you know?
It definitely feels like that. Yep. And end of the season especially, where all of a sudden, why not play the kids? I think play the kids is like you mentioned extra time radio. It's like one of their prime
Yeah,
slogans. Just
hashtag.
Dallas, play the kids. Chicago,
Yeah.
Philadelphia. So yeah, I think in Chicago, like you can full on. If you look at the starting lineup, you can have Slonina in goal, U23. You can have one of their center backs, hopefully Tehran maybe, um, as like your defender. You can pick up Gutierrez,
Espinosa.
yeah, Espinosa, and then Duran. He
Gutierrez.
doesn't have a card, but people seem pretty high on Duran. Or
Oh, yeah. That's a new name to me.
yeah, he was 18, so he was 17 last year, and they signed him a year in advance, and he couldn't join MLS before he was 18. So now he's 18,
Nice.
supposedly coming in. It's kind of a mix, right? Like I'm looking at the depth chart from like MLS Soccer right now, and he is
Hmm.
behind Shibilko as like second striker right now. But if I look at Chicago Fire Twitter, they seem very, very hyped about him. They put him ahead of Shibilko even. So, yeah,
Mate, I totally missed that they signed Shabilko.
right?
I was just goofing about a few days ago and I seen them on their team sheet. I'm
Yeah,
like, Shabilko? How did they
yep,
get him? Did they
yeah,
kidnap him? What happened there, man?
maybe. And then Shaqiri too, right? Now, so you have now all of a
Shaqiri.
sudden, look at that, like, right? You've got
Yep.
Shibilko, Shaqiri, Ivanov, and supposedly a rumored like young DP number 10 that's nobody knows yet, but they're trying to get one. So all of a sudden, that's a whole different front four,
Yeah.
which,
So Chi-
mm,
Chicago could be a real wild card then. I totally forgot about. I know this sounds stupid. I totally forgot about Shaqiri, even though it's been the talk of
yeah,
the town for the last week. Um,
it's
But
huge.
yeah, man, because like Shaqiri, and again, for anyone who's not familiar with MLS to any great extent, normally or not normally, quite usually, when you have the high profile, high caliber Europeans coming over, not all of them will play every match. Some of them don't like to play on different pitches, different climates, etc. But Shaqiri, no matter what the contribution he offers at Chicago, it's a really safe assumption he's going to be on every set piece. It's a really safe assumption that he's going to get on the ball all the time. And when you look at the numbers that Carlos Heel can do, there's absolutely no reason that Shaqiri can't do that. Will he do it in the same frequency is the other question, of course. Do you have big hopes for Shaqiri this year?
I do. I mean, I've lived in Chicago the last 2 years. Chicago sports are generally pretty painful to follow, not gonna lie. But just the I guess kind of comes back to like this offseason being so much more ambition, right? Like Chicago previously, I don't know what their record signing was. It was like a couple of years ago. I think it was Nemanja Nikolic maybe, but
Schweinsteiger?
oh, Schweinsteiger, yeah. So they have some history of like these caliber players, but like Schweinsteiger absolutely killed it, right? Like he, for lack of
At
a better
centre
term,
back.
left it all. Yeah, right. Like, but he gave his all, and so Shaqiri strikes me as like similar type of person, like a fighter who like is not coming here for vacation. He is coming to Chicago in the winter. That is already like says something about his character because Chicago in the winter is absolutely miserable, which is why I'm in
Yeah.
Buenos Aires. But I digress. And so
But
yeah,
it might not be too bad compared to Switzerland. You know,
yeah,
might be quite used to it.
you,
Who
you have
knows?
no mountains. The biggest like skiing place is like a little like trash dump, like 30 yards up and down, or 30 meters height
uh,
elevation. But I yeah,
Last kind of thing I'll say on Chicago is like from watching games there, like number one, Chicago versus New York City is always a goal fest for anyone who maybe gets a chance to watch that. Um, but Chicago's home stadium, Soldier Field, is a very impressive stadium. You know to see on the television. Certainly, it's a lovely place. It's quite unique as well. It's like two big kind of runs and it's a big kind of bowl kind of thing. It's a nice place, and yeah, so I think Shaqiri could be onto something for sure. And again, it's just the frequency. How often will he play? He does have a career history of injuries, as well as then you add in the dynamic of MLS. Some of these key players won't play on plastic pitches or in different climates or whatever. So be mindful of that. Is I think what me and Richard would say.
yeah. Do you feel like you're more watching like Eastern Conference teams because of the time zones? So sometimes I heard they
In
might
the
be on
UK, hundred
Sky in
percent.
the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In the UK, 100%. You're always going to get Miami on the television because of the Beckham Neville stuff. You'll get a lot of Atlanta. You'll get a lot of New York because of the obvious like, tie-ins to the British footprint that they've got over here with other things. So watching Eastern Conference if you're in the UK is the easiest. The Western Conference, as Richard said, with the time difference, it doesn't tend to be on Sky. It'll probably be on Free Sports or something like that, and it'll be like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. So watching the Galaxy, watching Kansas, watching LAFC is very difficult
Yeah, because
unless
that
you're
was
playing in the Eastern
nice.
Conference.
Yeah, it's always nice to like watch your players. You know, probably something that I want to do more of this year, given restrictions are likely to be a little bit less common. So, but yeah,
Of course.
nice.
Similar to DC last year, the Whitecaps really had an unexpected season last year, to say the least. You know, they were kind of reinforced halfway through the season with Scottish Messi coming in, Ryan Gauld. But prior to that, they were doing pretty well anyway. You know, they were kind of punching above their weight and getting really stuck into it. They've sold Krapau to LAFC. I think we're expecting Thomas Hassel to be the number one. He saved a penalty in a friendly the other day. So I'm getting kind of excited about that now. But the coach that they've got, I always forget how to pronounce his name. It's Sarantini or something like that. Is the sort of coach that I always gravitate towards. The guy is like a real coach on the training field. His background, if any aren't familiar, is like a development coach in US soccer, so coaching coaches and coaching youth teams. And those types of guys, if they're good and they get the right environment, can be lethal. And I think Whitecaps are proof in the proof in the pudding of that last year.
Yeah, some of the videos they put on social media is just like he seems like a guy you just want to have a beer with. Like
Yeah,
he just the atmosphere is just very, very nice. And so and then yeah, add in like Scottish Messi. He's one of the players that should have a card this year. So curious where that ends up. I think last year we all
it's
got a
not
little
going to be cheap.
bit. Where did we get duped the most? I think Donovan Pines. Everybody was like, it's Pine
Aye.
season, and then I think his first card went for like 1 ETH. That was
Wow.
yeah. That was I don't know who ended up with that, but not the most profitable move in hindsight. But yeah, Gold should or Gold. How do you pronounce his name?
Gold.
Gold. He should. He's so consistent. And then Brian White had a little resurgence. They just signed him to a 4-year extension, and so
Big
he is
contract.
yeah. And so they clearly believe in him, and yeah, the pieces are there. They got the defense mostly returning, and then I think they signed one or two like center mid pieces, Vite from Brazil, but I think that's mostly going to be backup. So solid.
I just seen
And
as
then
well there on the roster list that they've got they brought in Berhalter's son, Sebastian. You know, so he did. I had his one of a
yep,
hundred card. I let go of it a while ago, but he was at Austin last year on loan from Columbus. And if you look at Berhalter's stats per minutes, they're very impressive. Like they just didn't get that many minutes, so sometimes that can skew reality, of course, as we know. But he could be a wee cheeky one to watch out for if you're looking for U23s and you like a familiar name. You know, his dad's the men's national team coach. If any's at home aren't aware.
yeah. I think they also have the Canadian national team coach's son in their like academy
Oh,
or
do they?
something. Yeah, so they have both. They're just going after coach's son. So
Good
yeah,
strategy, eh? Get some picked.
yeah, right.
But we're seeing the now. I didn't want to bring it up, but we're seeing the now a real like golden age of Canadian football. The now, you know, of course, just beating America 2-0. Looks like you're going to Qatar. Toronto have always been the big team. Montreal have had some success in recent times, and it feels like Vancouver, after last year, maybe they're going to catch up and really make that Canadian triangle very competitive this year. And the reason I bring that up for anyone at home is the best Canadian team gets a Champions League spot, you know, for next season. So that's something to be mindful of if you're looking for more utility as time goes on with some of these cards. The Canadian teams can be a good exploit. But that rolls us on quite nicely to the biggest Canadian team, Toronto. Bradley's in the house, and Insignia's on the way. Maybe Belotti's on the way as well. What do we think about Toronto, Richard?
So much happening. Oh my God. Like, because before Sorare was a thing, Toronto had the Jovinko era essentially, right? When they had Bradley,
Yep.
Jovinko. Before that, I always forget his name. It's uh, not Dwyer.
Defoe.
Defoe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was the first like it's a bloody big deal, the social media campaign. So and they were good teams back then. And so you have
Yeah.
Pozuelo. all around, like I'm very, we're getting back to like we're optimistic about everything, so you're optimistic about nothing. But like on the overall, I would say all the Canadian teams I'm personally optimistic on, simply because last year was such a mess in terms of the travel. And I'm not talking about like people like Nick DeLeon who like refused to get vaccinated. Like that's play stupid games, win
It's
stupid
our story.
prizes. That's a different story. But I'm just in terms of like they started the year in Florida or I think Utah, Salt Lake. And so now they actually have a full year of home games. I believe they can have fans in the stadium again. Obviously for the players, they're
Thanks.
not sleeping in hotel rooms every night. They can see family. I think that was a big thing with Pozuelo. He had like couldn't see his family. His wife was stuck with their I don't know if child or children, and that like weighed heavily on him. He went like there's lots of like very like I guess heartfelt interviews about these things from different sources, and so yeah, just thinking about that from a human perspective, I'm very much big on the Canadian teams to begin with. And then, yeah, add in the signings like Salcedo, like Toronto's defense was a mess, but Carlos Salcedo, that's a solid pickup. Like
Big time.
he, I forgot that he used to play in Salt Lake. Like that's where he started his career. But Mavinga plus Salcedo is like not a bad combo. The question is what happens with the wing backs or like the outside backs. Because I think Auro is on his way to Brazil, and then Kemar
Lawrence.
Lawrence also wasn't on like the preseason squad, so he's out or is on his way out.
Oh, really?
And so currently they have no outside backs. So that's a bold strategy, but I'm sure they'll bring somebody in there. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked for Toronto overall.
So I've got a wee kind of fan love affair with Dom Dwyer from like my degenerate gambling days. He used to be great
Aye,
at
aye, aye.
Kansas for backing for an anytime goal scorer. He was a bit of a machine. Didn't work out for him, and or where was the last place he landed? Orlando. Didn't really kick off, and now he finds himself in Toronto. Do we think Dwyer will get minutes? Do we think he's up to it?
I don't know. I think they buy him out? Let me see. I'm trying to look him up. Because I believe last I saw, so they just bought out, they traded, oh no, he's on Toronto. You're right. But it was like one of those things where like somebody traded him away for Toronto to pick up the salary, which is odd to me because they just
Got you.
tried. Toronto basically did the same thing with Josie Altidore. Like they're, I don't think it's official yet, but like essentially sounds like it's done. They bought out his salary to get it off the cap, like off the books, and then he'll go to New England eventually. But Dom Dwyer, yeah, he's only 31. Feels like he's been around forever. Like
You think Josie's going to New England?
that's what I think Tom
Future.
Bogert was talking about that. Yeah.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, Dom Dwyer also like, I mean, I'm not the biggest Dom Dwyer fan, but
Oh
if he gets
really? Oh, I
minutes,
love him.
I mean, think about it, right? Like everybody who gets minutes in front of Osorio, Pozuelo, and eventually Insigne should do well, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
personally on the
the other
Akinola
poacher,
train.
he's.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're on the Akinola train? No,
Yeah.
I'd be selling that ticket.
No, no, no.
I'm not
That
an
train's
Akinola
leaving the
fan.
station soon, hopefully.
But yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Kids get promise. He's got a good goal record, especially goals per minute and all that. It's amazing. But I had a super rare last year. I just get really frustrated with his injuries and whatnot, and it just really I was pulling my hair out all last year with him.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of to me, he doesn't exist anymore. I've moved on.
Yeah.
But I make you right. Whoever does start for Toronto up front with all these pieces around him, Pozuelo and Insigne later on in the year, could be absolutely a goal machine because Josie's not going to be there now. Patrick Mullins is there. Patrick Mullins has been doing good for Toronto over the last year or two, but he's not a guy who's going to spearhead your attack and win you the league. Neither is
Yeah.
Dwyer for that matter. But there's definitely some question marks over how Bob Bradley's going to put that attack together because he's known as being a very attacking MLS manager.
Yeah. If I had to guess right now who starts on like week one, they signed Jesus Jimenez, who
Yep.
doesn't have a card. I forgot where he came from, but basically he's kind of like like the in that player slot between like regular and then designated players. So he's not like a big money signing, but I would guess it's between him and AO Akinola to open up. But Perusa is also they've got a good amount of young players. Shuffleberg too, and then Okello and Priso. So yeah, Toronto's interesting to follow if they get back to because they're terrible the last couple of years, last 2 years. which basically since
Yeah, they've
Sorare has
just
been
been.
around.
Yeah, it just feels like they've really aged out. You know, Jose's got to
Yeah.
the end of his time, and then I forget who the centre back they had was. It was a veteran of MLS.
Oh,
Was it
Omar
the
Gonzalez.
LGP? Was it? It was
Omar
Omar
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. That's who it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
So he's also back in
You
New
know, so
England now.
and honestly, I missed that. And
Yeah.
obviously,
It's
and little Michael Bradley, he's not getting any younger as time
uh,
goes on. You know, so it felt for me they were really just carrying a lot of age, carrying a lot of tired bodies. You know,
it,
so
and
if they
high
get
salaries
reinvigorated, they
on all
could just be
those.
a team and high salaries. Yep, they
Yep.
could just pop off and run because they are a powerhouse in MLS traditionally. You know, over the last five
Yep.
6 years, um, to say the least.
Yeah. They seem to bounce
Um,
between like worst team in the league and then spend a lot of money and hit on that signing and then be, top three all of a sudden. So quite the roller coaster.
well, on that note, that takes us lovely onto another kind of situation. I forget the manager's name, so I'm just going to double check it. Yeah, Caleb Porter. He's
Ah,
notorious for having a good season and a bad season. So wins MLS Cup with Columbus. Everyone's high as a kite. You know, oh, Columbus are amazing. And then last year, absolutely stunk the place out. So I think we're expecting a good season from Columbus this year, maybe, are we?
yeah. It's a lot of it was injuries to kind of give him some credit, but it was absurd how many injuries they had. Like Artur, Zardes, Aiden Morris, Wormgore. There's so many people. Like every time I like went through like the injury reports last year, Columbus had like a whole paragraph almost. It was absolutely obscene. And so
Took
you
up
would
2 tweets for the
imagine,
amount of characters you needed.
yeah, I don't know what they're doing in the training there. So I'd imagine some type of bounce back. But then, I mean, if we look at the East, I think we've said so far every single team will have some type of like rebound. So somebody has to, get worse. So perhaps a different question: Who do you think any looking at the East right now, maybe except Miami, but you could say maybe they can't get worse, but who do you think would have to get worse this year compared to last year? Because that's something I've been asking
Uh,
myself, and it's
I'm
tough to
looking at the
say.
Eastern Conference from last year. Orlando are probably one of the key teams for me that could drop down from a playoff spot to not being in the playoffs. Certainly, Montreal didn't finish in the playoffs last year, but they were in the playoffs for such a big period of the season, and their squad is nice on paper. Montreal, they've got some good players, but they're not deep. So they do suffer injuries quite hard. Unfortunately, if they get an injury to like Mason Toy, for example, or Georgi Mihailovic, they are really like down on their luck after that. They've not got much behind it. Orlando have obviously lost Nani to retirement. I think they've still got Pato on their books, and they've brought in Erkan Kara from Austria, of course. But one parallel I would bring up with Erkan Kara, and this isn't a direct parallel, but LA Galaxy last year signed Dejan Joveljic from the Austrian Bundesliga as well. Fair enough, that was halfway through the season, but he didn't really hit the ground running last year. So Erkan Kara, he might, but be prepared that he might not hit the ground running initially.
Yeah, he definitely hit the ground because he got carted off a couple of days ago. So that's a terrible
Oh,
pun.
did he?
But I think he's fine. He's day to day again. But it was like if you look at his like Sorare data price chart, there's a nice dip of like, oh, is he gonna miss all season? But seems to be doing all right now. Yeah,
What about
preseason
you in the East?
injuries.
Who do you think will fall flat in their face?
I'm trying to think. So, I mean, I guess the easiest one is Nashville because you moved them to the West and replaced them with Charlotte. And despite them, us saying like,
Of course.
been very impressed with what they're doing, like, it's tough being an expansion team. Just put it that way, right? Like, everybody has to get used to it. So that's the easy pick for like missing the playoffs. And then Miami, Miami also, I think they got rid of 7 of the top 10 like highest paid players. Like they only kept Higuain for what it's worth, right? Like Morgan gone, all these other guys out. Uh, and they have that 2 million penalty from the whole Pellegrini saga, where they had
Yeah.
4 DPs or designated players. So they're already working on like a handicap in that sense. So that's one I'd probably
And there's very
avoid.
strong rumours they'll try to get their hands on Suarez as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's funny because I have the Suarez in my gallery because of that.
Oh,
Yep. And it's like,
I think it will come off, because
I
the
believe
thing
so.
about Miami, and I think Beckham's been quite smart with putting a team there, is like you will get a lot of Hispanic origin players that don't mind living in Orlando. You know, good
Exactly.
climate. You know, it's a welcoming culture. You know, I think there's a lot of Spanish speakers in Orlando. Pardon me, Florida. Beg your pardon.
Yep.
Obviously, state of the art facilities. Big Higgs there as well. So that could be a duo, Higuain and Suarez up front if it came off.
Yeah. The Higuain's, yeah. Are they going to play him as number 10? Like, I can see that happening once they get Suarez. Just because I think they were saying like it's better like his mobility. It's a funny way of calling somebody fat, but hey, it's all good. So, but yeah, I mean, beyond those and maybe Cincinnati as well, like it's really a, you know,
Coin
there's
toss, isn't it?
so many like good to very good teams in the East, in my opinion. So tough.
Again, a lot of people that will be listening to this, as we've mentioned I've mentioned a few times, will be looking for U23s because the MLS, and especially when the European season closes down, they will have massive premiums on them.
Yeah.
Philadelphia have been quite famous as one of the most successful academies. I think we're all expecting a huge year out of Paxton Aronson.
Yep.
Also, as well, like a guy that didn't have a great year last year that I think is primed to maybe regain some previous form would be Fontana. What do you think about Philly coming into this year?
Yeah. It's they have do they have Champions League this year? I think I always mix it up, but basically they've kept most of their roster, like added Ure, I think also from Vienna actually, right? Like, or no, that he came from the Danish league or something, and basically he looks like a big upgrade over Sibylko, and then picked up Carranza from Miami for basically peanuts. Um, I think that could be like a Pochettino situation where he goes somewhere else and all of a sudden like already scored in preseason, like looks very strong. So in terms of U23 picks, I think Carranza might be the first name from Philadelphia that assuming he beats out Sergio Santos for the starting spot, like that's where my, Philadelphia U23 budget would go.
Nice.
Yeah, Fontana is one of the ghosts of last season that it's I guess that's the nice thing. Like if I look at my history, like I have a bunch of bids sent for Fontana, but none got accepted. And that is one of the
Oh
like,
wow.
it worked out super well in hindsight. Because yeah, I think right now he's still in Italy. He might sign with the Serie B team. So he's not with Philadelphia right now even.
Oh, I
So
didn't even know that.
yeah,
Hard to keep up
he's
with MLS sometimes.
and it's like most people are keeping up with him through his girlfriend's Instagram. Like if you go on the Discord, it's like, who's this girl? It's like that's Fontana's girlfriend, sending an Instagram of like, oh, when your boyfriend leaves for Italy the next morning and has a long flight, like last night together, like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Investigative journalism, eh? Gotta love it.
right. So yeah,
I was just looking at
Aronson,
the man.
oh man,
I was just looking at the man, Mikel Ure. There, really good
yeah,
scoring record at Bromby. Over 50% appearances to goals over the last 2 seasons. Got some
crazy,
good
right?
European credentials as well. Scored against Leon. Played for Denmark a bunch.
Yep.
27 years old. Yeah, really like that profile. Again, that's one that I missed coming into it.
Does he have no, he doesn't have a Sorare card.
No, I won't
Yeah,
tell
very
you yet,
curious
but
where that ends up. But then because there's another Rapid Vienna forward that also went to MLS. And it wasn't Taxi that went to DC. Basically, Kara and the other guy both went within like a week of each other, signed with the teams here. So
it feels
yeah,
like we're seeing a really good pattern of challenger Euro players because the other one you
yep,
brought up, I forget who it was, but he came from the Polish league. It was a guy, it was at Toronto, Jimenez. He's
Jimenez,
came
yep,
from the Polish division, so it feels like as much as MLS are selling their young players into Champion Europe, it feels like they're shopping in Challenger, trying to pick up
exactly.
some of these guys that have great stats.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are kind of they're not the high end players that like the designated players. They're in that depth where often if we think about like CONCACAF Champions League compared to Mexico, that's where MLS really loses out. It's like the depth beyond the first 11. Like, MLS can keep up with the first 11 easily because they have, the high like superstar players, but you also have, kind of like those GAM, general allocation money signings. And then a lot of these
Yep.
European players turn out in the targeted like TAM, targeted allocation money signings,
Allocation.
where basically you buy down their big salary. So in the past they would have been designated players. So yeah, that's a lot of like good depth coming in. And then yeah, it basically seems like, we talk about MLS 4.0, 5.0. we're kind of moving up in terms of, the spending is increasing across the league rapidly. And this might be like more of like a tinfoil hat theory, but if you think about MLS, right, like the structure of the ownership is billionaires, right? It's, teams have those types of owners and they don't rely on the fan revenue as much. And so it seems to me that given COVID happened, and a lot of the teams in Europe, especially, right, who rely on like ticket sales, maybe even jersey sales, that revenue completely like vanished overnight, right, last year.
Yeah,
Whereas MLS with their big owners, with the big paychecks, like they can keep spending. So maybe that's why we're seeing
yeah.
such an active like transfer market right now.
Of course, because it is all franchise-based MLS, and again, for anyone at home that's not aware, when Charlotte, Cincinnati, Miami, all these teams come in, they pay money. They pay 500 million to get a seat at the table, and that just lines the pockets of the league.
So kind of an odd way of, improving, but seems like it's happening to at least to an extent, right? Like Insignia as well. Yeah, so much happening.
Yeah, and Insignia is such a marquee signing in so many ways. He's obviously not the biggest name that's ever went to MLS, but he's probably the biggest name at the point of his career that he's came across in. He's not Ibra, he's not Pirlo, he's not any of these guys, but those guys went 30 plus, whereas Insignia, I know he's around the 30 mark, but he just won the Euros. He's going to go to the World Cup in Qatar. It's almost undoubted, I think, at this point. Um, and it's a real big
Yeah.
shake up in the league for sure.
So, and then also on
I think
Sorare.
is it,
Oh, go ahead.
no, you go.
I was gonna say like I was about to look up Heel's card. Like what is Carl's Heel going for right now? It's like an ETH and a
All
half,
of it,
I
half
think.
a mil.
Yeah, right. So people are starting to pick up that, you can play these guys, and especially over the summer where there's nothing happening, you know, these are going to be the players that have, like most winning lineups will have some combination of these guys, like Cecilia, Morioka, Heel, that type of stuff. So,
Yeah, he's definitely on that level.
yeah,
The clubs that I'm really close to for next year, and it'd be remiss of me not to talk about them. So there's three clubs that I'm really close to for MLS, or probably four, in fact. The Revs, this is just down to the cards that I own at the moment. Revs, New York, and Atlanta. So three teams in the East I'm kind of chasing after. And then really the only team in the West that I've got much of a consideration with is the Galaxy. And that does make my skin crawl when I say that out loud. But but I do have a lot of their cards and I do like their players at the moment. So I'm kind of done on that. When it comes to the Galaxy, I think Galaxy and Atlanta I would put in this mold. I can see both of them going on and winning their conference. I think they're both got really strong teams, good manager and position. And I think a lot of the trades and a lot of the play that we've seen from them last year is only going in one direction at the moment. I don't see any bumps in the road coming. What do you feel about Galaxy and or Atlanta?
so kind of similar to you, Atlanta, I have basically that's my like one of my defensive stacks is, Guzan plus Miles Robinson plus Brooks Lennon. Tried to get what's his name, Alan Franco as well, but mixed efforts on that. But yeah,
Yeah,
Galaxy as
it's good to
well.
hear it.
There's another team that seem to have a very good like a selection of U23 players, right? So I think you have Alvarez, right? That's probably like number one on the team sheet.
UEFA.
Yeah, and then you can add in Cabral, you can add in maybe a Jovovic if he gets enough game time. Araujo, like the right back, pretty high on him.
Yep,
So
me
yeah,
too.
it's and then Douglas Costa. So I do have a Douglas Costa because why not? I
Nice.
don't know. Just speculation.
Why not exactly, man? I don't know, I'm tempted to go get one, but I don't
You
know
can
if I,
have
I don't
mine.
know if I need one. But
Just
oh yeah, maybe I will.
send me the right offer. Yeah,
So,
there's
so okay, I'm quite high on Galaxy. You're quite high on Atlanta as well. And obviously, Atlanta are bringing in Almada. Barco's out the
exactly
door. Joseph, we're hoping Joseph gets a full fucking year without getting injured or missing
right.
matches or anything like that.
That
How
could be
powerful could Joseph be
big.
this year?
Good. Yeah, I think at this point, like in hindsight, although we stop right now, if he were to leave MLS, in hindsight, we would say, yeah, he was great. Like the year that he like basically was like I don't know how many goals, basically broke the record. It was like he had so much talent behind him. Um, and then like the year before was Almiron plus Villalba plus there was another guy, just like ridiculous front four.
Sad and Gressel.
Assad, Gressel, exactly that year. So, Almada,
Somebody was
he's
somebody was telling me, sorry to digress, but somebody was telling me Asad went to like the
he did.
Paraguayan league or
He did.
something dodgy
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that.
Yeah, what did he sign with? Yeah, Paraguay or Uruguay? It
Some league
was
that's not covered, unfortunately.
Universidad Católica, which is in. The question is, where is that?
Full marks for pronunciation there, Richard.
Oh God, I'm trying. Uh, yeah, my Spanish is no bueno. Ecuador. Oh no. Sorry. Chile. He went to a Chilean team.
Chile.
So
Is that what it was?
there you have it.
Such an odd one.
Right.
So who so you're high on Atlanta defense. I've got a Lennon and a Robinson. I just wouldn't spend money on a Guzan. I couldn't do that in good conscience. I just think he's so old. You know.
Exactly.
Um, so where else are you looking for, or where else have you stacked up on your cards coming into this year?
Kind of in the West, Seattle and Portland. I think if you were entering MLS right now and you were to create,
Good.
there's no River Plate, there's no Boca in MLS, right? Like we don't have that type of like dominance given the structure of MLS. But if you look at Seattle's roster right now, that is as close as on paper as we've gotten in the last couple of years to such dominance. And so if they translate that to the field, I mean, they kept the entire starting defense, they kept Fry around. Obviously, they get back Jordan Morris in a full season now, in a full off season. They bring in Rusnak, Lodero, hopefully somewhat healthy. Rui Diaz re-signed for 4 years. João Paulo re-signed for 4 years. Who else am I missing? Like Leo Chu, we haven't even seen yet. That's like their like
Yeah.
Brazilian U22 winger who's supposed to be very, very good, for lack of a better term. And so
Nice.
Seattle is where I would. So I have, the Lodero plus Rui Diaz combo. Wouldn't mind throwing in like a Rusnak or Morris,
Christian Roldan.
Roldan even, yeah. And so it's just like on paper, it's so good, such a good roster. Um, and
Even the
then
defense, I think the Seattle
yeah,
defenders are amongst the best in the league. When you look at
agree.
Tulu and Yaimar,
Yeah,
they're amazing players to be picking up.
yeah. And Nohu just had an amazing like AFCON. Like I think he made Guardians like team of the tournament, shut down Salah. Like could be big. And so if they keep him all year, uh, yeah, Yeimar is like what top five for like AA scores and like on Sorare anyway.
That's
So
huge.
and then yeah, so I was trying to pick up a Stefan Fry somehow. That's still like on my list of things to do, just because yeah, that's the team that you know my
Well,
favorite
for
for
coming
MLS
into
Cup.
this year, I thought I'll get myself an MLS limited stack just for I've got a limited, Champion America footprint, and I just went bought all Seattle. I just went Fry, Yaimar, João Paulo, Roldan, and Rui
Nice.
Diaz and Jordan Morris. Just went and swept them up ages ago. So hopefully the XP will come into play, and
Yeah.
and Seattle will do Seattle, and they'll finish first or second, and they'll go for a run in the playoffs like they do every year. Hopefully.
Yep. Yeah. What was it like the last like 7 or 8 MLS Cups had either Seattle or Portland in them? Like they
Yeah.
just crazy.
And that's the thing about Portland's. I remember it might have been the first time they won MLS. I don't know if they've won it more than once. They had Liam Ridgewell in defence. But I forget what the final was that year, but I think it was Portland and Columbus, if memory serves me right. And I remember thinking, like, this team is so like basic. There's no like big star in their team, Portland I'm talking about. But they were so effective. And then ever since that time, I always noticed Portland. And they are, and again, like my family that are in America are Seattle natives, basically. So that's the rivalry out there for, again, anyone that doesn't know, Portland and Seattle's like Liverpool, Everton, basically. But for the last like 5 or 6 years, you're right. Like Portland are always in amongst it. They've got some great pieces in that team. Eric Williamson missed a lot of minutes last year, but then you look at the Charas and you look at Mora up front. There's another striker that's escaping my mind, but Portland are not a sexy team on the surface level, but you got a lot of consistency out of them.
Absolutely. And I have, Blanco just like he was actually
Blanco.
he was hanging out with me here in Buenos Aires. We're kicking the ball around a little bit, but he just flew back to Portland yesterday, had an emotional goodbye, but he's coming back. So it's okay because I still have Diego Valeri to hang out with here. He's now back in his like
He's
childhood
left.
club. Yep. So that's like an absolute legend. Like in terms of like MLS, like designated players, like easy top five for me. But yeah, Yimi Chara, that's like, I think that's, if I had to pick my boy from Portland this year, I think I have Blanco, but like I would rather have Yimi Chara. Which
Nice.
oddly
Good
enough,
play.
this is like a random fun fact, but so Yimi Chara, if you look at his limited cards, he's a forward. If you look at his rare cards, he's a midfielder. And so Yimi Chara as a forward unlimited is like that's pretty good. I don't know how this
Pretty
happened
impressive.
because even in the same year of last year, his rare cards are also midfielders. So I don't know how his like limited became a forward, but yeah, there was a guy in the German Telegram group who like hit me up. He's like, "Which forward should I get?" And one of the options was Yimi Chara. I was like, "What do you mean Yimi Chara? He's not a forward, but I would absolutely go for him."
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, it's super random, right?
Oh, yeah, that is well made. So anyone who doesn't know, Yemi Chara is like one of these guys who covers every blade of grass, tackles everyone, and passes to everyone. And he's just get energy coming out of his backside. So to have a guy like that as a forward, I'm going to check out Sorare data as
You're
well.
thinking of Diego Chara, but Yimi Chara is like very similar.
Oh,
Diego is like
I'm a,
the midfield destroyer, right? And then Yimi, but he's Yimi on the same team, right? Like, um, still, like,
sorry,
what
you're right.
is? But still, like, he scores much better as a forward, and in limited
He does,
that'd be
yeah.
neat.
Wow, yeah, he does. Oh, of course, you're Yemi. Of course, yeah. Diego's sorry, guys, for my blurb, but yeah, it's easy to get them confused.
Yeah, for its worth, Diego Chara
Yeah,
still has like gas left in the tank based on the cup final. Like yeah, bossed it.
was Diego I was thinking about because he's much older, and it's one of these things. It's always a surprise how much he's got in the tank when you watch him doing his game. I just forgot who was who there. I'm really sorry, but the point still stands. But uh, Diego is firmly a midfielder card. There's no game busting.
Unfortunately, that would be wild. Yeah. So,
Big time.
but yeah, Portland, good team. And then yeah,
And again, like
Ivacic,
Portland, yeah, I was
just
going to say
just
the
the
goalkeeper
goalkeeper
situation is
because you're
exciting.
gonna get questions about it. Like you know, I think a lot of us were hoping for like some other trade, but it seems to be Ivacic as 1A, and then if he somehow
Bingham.
fumbles it and whatever does very poorly, it'll be Bingham. So not what Sorare managers hoped for, but here we are.
No, it's not gonna be Hunter, is it? Um,
Not anytime soon.
so a lot of a lot of Sorare users last year, and I know this just from being on Twitter and talking to people, kind of fell in love with Kansas. There was a lot of great cards in Kansas last year with Fontas, Eli, Russell, the Hungarian lads, Daniel Saloy and
Salo, yeah.
Polido, blah blah blah. And again, the thing about Kansas, get a great manager, Peter Vermees, been there, done that all over the league. He's one of the kind of league legends. They've got a league legend in goals in Team Melia, who's over 35 at this point. But Kansas are a team that, similar to Portland, on the surface level, are not a sexy outfit to get involved with. But when you watch them and when you've got a couple of their cards, you realize, wow, they are effective.
Yeah, they just it works, right? Like again, similar, maybe even Colorado, where like they don't have the big name, right? Like can't remember last time Kansas signed like a woo, like flashy signing like that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, Polito, that's pain. Because of all the players you mentioned, I had Polito. I still have Polito for what's worth. If you don't know, he's out for the season. That was announced like randomly on a Tuesday. Um, just lingering knee
Because
issues.
they brought a forward in. So they had Saloy, Russell, and Toledo. They brought a forward in, I forget who, and then they announced the Toledo thing because people were first were
Yep.
like, how's this guy going to play? Who is it they've signed again? I'm totally losing my
Was
mind.
it Sionis? I don't know. Because right now, yeah, I don't.
I could have
It's a
sworn
good
it was
question.
a biggish name. I can't remember who it was
Oh,
now. I'm
oh,
losing my mind.
Macias. I have to go through my Twitter feed. There's so many signings.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up, but I'm pretty sure they got like a decent forward in from another MLS club, perhaps, or maybe Mexico or something like
Oh, they
that.
tried to get Robert Beric,
Oh,
but
that's what it was.
then
Yeah, did they not get
then he walked
Beric?
away. No, he walked away from
Oh,
the
did they?
contract. Yeah, because
Oh,
he got picked up in the second waiver draft where you like renegotiate the contract, and obviously Beric was on a ridiculous salary in Chicago.
yeah.
They tried to get him under the DP level, because right now they don't have any DP spots that they can replace Polito with, right?
Yeah,
Kinda, and I think who's the other DP? Russell, and then Polito. So they have all three spots
yeah.
taken, with one of them,
Gad,
out for the year.
Gaddy Keane does a DP, yeah, for sure.
Yep. So it's a tough spot for Kansas. Um, yeah. But
I
yeah,
didn't I
Barrage.
didn't realize the
Oh
Berich
god.
thing fell through.
Oh yeah. Talk about investigative journalism, huh? Like I sent my roommate. So Barrage was supposed to sign with, I think, AS Saint Etienne in France, and
Okay.
then that, and French media was saying that fell through, and he's going to China. And so I sent my roommate who, speaks Chinese, sent him off on a like Chinese Twitter, Weibo, and he's like, yeah, there's not much here. So I go on Beric's Instagram, and he followed this guy Vesinovic or something, who plays for Tianjin in China. And then I was like, wow, he followed him yesterday. Like, there's something on this China thing. And then I think he's close to signing. Basically, what happened is I had a bunch of coffee and mate, and I was like, oh my God, like somebody in Chinese Super League, he's gonna rip it up. And so I bought two Beriches,
Good.
and
Nice.
now I'm just waiting for like the official like Chinese announcement any day now, maybe,
That'd be
or it just
amazing.
goes to zero, or he just rides the
Chinese
bench
players
somewhere,
can be great differentials. I remember when I first came on the platform,
right?
guys that picked up Marko Arnautovic at West Ham. Well, obviously he went to China for a
Yeah,
bit, Arnautovic. So a lot of guys had Arnautovic super rares. Obviously there was a unique, and he was in China absolutely throttling it. So, like I know that China are like turning down how much money they're bringing in or spending on imports and that kind of thing. But if you get a guy that does land over there, just punched the mic. They can still be game busters over there because it's still a relatively underdeveloped league in terms of the the domestic talent that they have.
yeah. The guy he followed on Instagram is also like a
Fingers crossed for
Serbian
you.
player. Yeah, and he's just like, look at this rare data. It's like 70, 70, 80, 90, like pretty good.
Nice. I
So
used to have a
yeah.
guy. I sold him. He's called. If you're on Sorare data, it's Sunjic, Sierra Uniform November Juliet Indigo Charlie. There's not many cards of him. He's a centre back, and he scores really
Oh,
well in China.
he came from Osaka, right? Osaka, Cerezo, Osaka.
No, no, no. It's a very similar name. No, this guy came from
Ah,
Dinamo Moscow.
okay, okay.
Um, but on Gadi
Nice.
Kinda, I picked up a Gadi Kinda last year, and this is maybe a wee hint or tip for the folks at home. Gadi Kinda wasn't playing much last year, but I'd seen somewhere, I heard somewhere that he was on a DP deal, a
Yep.
designated player. So sometimes what you'll find with some of these teams is they'll bring a guy in on a DP slot, designated player, big money, big transfer fee, and maybe for whatever reason or whatever, maybe they don't hit the ground running right away, and they will go under people's radars if they've not got a good L5 and they're not making appearances. But when you know the club is invested that spot, because those spots are gold dust, they're precious. Um, Sometimes you can get a nice wee angle out of that if you just kind of wait for things to develop. Because even Beric, if he signs for China tomorrow or in China, he's not going to play the first match. It might take a week or two for him to get up to speed, bed in, tactical analysis, and blah blah blah, whatever. So knowing who is taking up what spots in different clubs can shed a bit of light on who's going to be the key guy that does come in when they're in form and they need to be winning things and whatever.
Yeah, you can kind of call that like the follow the money strategy,
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
basically,
it. I
right?
like that
Yeah.
for sure. Um, and again, as I glance across MLS, I'm not too sure if there's much else. LAFC are a real question mark for me this year. Like, I don't even know who the hell the manager is at this point in time. But
Uh, couldn't tell you either.
Quest has left.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Arango's
Quest has
good,
left.
but
Sorry. Oh,
Arango, the forward, like it's probably want to be
Arango.
like the
What's his nick? What's the
oh
name that's on the back of his shirt again? There's something crazy. Not Mexican
oh
nickname.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man.
It's like
Uh,
Chicharito, but it's not Chicharito.
yeah,
But yeah, Arango, Vela, and Brian Rodriguez is a
yep,
deadly front three. But I said Noah Tuesta, midfield. I still like Cifuentes quite a lot, and I can see Tajuri Shradi's on there. Roster, I didn't know Tajuri had went there. That's a surprise to me. Um, but the thing that I would probably look at the most with LA at the moment is their defence. Jesus Marilla and Eddie Segura, two very, very good centre backs if they can play.
exactly.
And the goalkeeper, we're waiting on the goalkeeper getting some cards. Thomas Romero, he's going to be expensive from day one, isn't he?
Crepeau. Remember the trade? So
Oh, Crepeau.
they got Crepeau from Vancouver,
Of
so
course.
that's the guy right there. That's the guy to have. And so
Of
yeah,
course, yeah.
but I think like I like in terms of you mentioned U23, like between there's not too much, r- like there aren't too many America MLS U23 mids that can compete with like the likes of River and Boca or like the Brazilians. But I think Mihailovic in Montreal and then Cifuentes and LAFC, they're kind of like I think they can hang with that type of like talent or scoring output, put it
Yeah.
that way.
I think once we'd got like 10 games into the season last year, I was absolutely kicking myself that I didn't buy a Yaimar and a Cifuentes, because both of them
Yeah,
were killers last year. Like, they really were just monsters.
yeah. Oh, actually, huh. I'm looking at like the depth chart right now, and MLS has Francisco Ginella as like ahead of Ely Sanchez, who they got from Kansas,
From
as their
Kansas,
number
yeah.
6 starter right now. So doesn't have a card, but it
Yeah,
seems
he's the
like
new
he
number
wouldn't
8.
be. Yeah, I guess yeah, he wouldn't be
But yeah,
U23 eligible. Slightly too old, but
he's been there.
anyway,
Yeah, he's been there for a little while. He's been injured.
yeah.
But yeah, so I've got a big question mark over LAFC. I sold my Vela just because I could not be bothered with. I thought I'll try and consolidate into some of the clubs where I've got big footprints, Um, and again, I've kind of touched on the squads that I'm kind of tracking and following really throughout this year.
Yeah,
But
consolidation.
I don't know what to. Yeah, I
That's
don't know what to
like,
think about LAFC. Because
yeah.
they're so top heavy. Change of manager. They didn't do great last year. Are they going to do any better this year? It's hard to say.
It was really when once Segura like got injured, like they had no defense, right? Like, um,
Yeah,
who was Fall was one of the guys that like came out of nowhere to kind of help out. He did decent, but yeah, Segura, Escobar, Murillo, like that should be a lot better this year. And then hopefully you can get a healthy Carlos Vela plus Arango. Yeah, there's reasons to be
and
optimistic, but
hopefully we get some Brian Rodriguez cards, eh?
about those, yeah, still doesn't
It's
have one.
been long
Wow,
overdue, man.
seriously.
Still not got one.
So
It's
yeah,
crazy, isn't it?
yeah,
And
lots of
on the last thing, probably
good.
the last thing, I know we've kind of spoke about them already, right? We talked about them having an off season last year, and that was Caleb Porter and the Columbus Crew. When you were talking about Seattle in terms of how powerful their squad is, I think on paper Columbus are in that bracket. They didn't show it last year, but I think we all thought coming into last season, signing Kevin Molino, keeping a hold of Nagbe, keeping a hold of Zela Ryan, and then even bringing in the experience of BWP. Jassy Zardes also gets into the national team. Miguel Berry. There's a few really good players in that team, but again, I think a lot of Sorare managers might look at last season Columbus and think, oh, well, we're going to get maybe a slightly better version of that. But I think they could be very close to being 2 seasons ago Columbus that we get this time around.
That would be best case, yeah. Because again, like I think Archer is still mostly injured. He has like 2 more months of recovery. Somebody was saying it's like
Okay.
not gonna be ready for a season opener, but yeah, just the amount of injuries they had last year, almost didn't have a chance. So, and they kept most of those guys. The question is, seems to be the daily discourse on like the MLS Discord is like, is it Miguel Berry or is it Gassi Zardes or is it both? You
Yeah.
know, I haven't
I
actually
think
seen
it's
a
one up
preseason
top.
lineup.
Generally, I think
Yeah,
it's again, things can change, especially when they didn't do so well last year. But I think generally
yeah.
they're a one up top kind of team.
So that would
Two
have to be
midfielders behind Zella
Zardes,
Ryan, a couple of wingers.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think he's the main man in BWP as your super sub if he's even still there. Because I
Uh,
think some of the stuff I'm looking at is a wee bit behind
yeah.
the current times.
I think they got Hurtado, like Eric Hurtado, as like I don't know where BWP actually
Yeah,
ended up. Where did he end up? Bradley
I'm
Wright
pretty sure he's still
Phillips.
there, but he might have moved.
He went. Uh, is he retired? Or he's clubless
Oh, but
currently.
that's from Richard. Do you think
Yeah.
Dallas will be good this year?
Yeah.
Because we're all high on Jesus Ferreira, right? And for good reason,
Yep.
right? I can totally get behind that, right? But as a team, they've been dog shit for a while, like new goalkeeper in. They've brought in from Holland, the U23 guy everybody was going nuts about, Martin Pais.
Case,
They got
yeah.
a decent manager in as well, who's working with them on the training field. By all accounts, he's similar to the Sartini character, but this guy's a coach, likes to bring through the youth. And
Yep.
you mentioned the boy earlier on, Velasco. I can see him now.
Yep. And
Do we
then
think they'll be any good?
Areola, like they've it's one of those like shifts in
Areola.
strategy, right? Because Dallas historically, like you said, one of best academies, selling players, sold Pepe, sold I think Justin Che as well.
Yep.
Uh,
Che,
Che,
Reynolds,
yeah.
Richards.
The list goes on, and so now it
Yeah.
seems like they're at least they've spent some of this money on Velasco, some of it on Areola, and so signed Ferreira to a DP deal. Like that's all like on paper really solid business. New right back Nanu, not Nani, but
I know.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
close.
I think the pieces are
His evil twin.
there. Yeah, but then Dallas also had so many like average like designated players that they've signed. Like what was it last year? Like O'Brien, Vargas. Like I don't think those guys did very much all
No, they
year.
didn't. I got a Vargas super rare. I've still got it. And
Sorry.
I was trying to dump it for nothing, but then see the team he's went back to in Ecuador or wherever the fuck it is. They're in Champions League, so he's actually playing
Oh,
this midweek. Freddie
oh, what?
Vargas. So I thought I'll keep him. We'll see if he scores or something, and then maybe
Yeah,
I'll just hang on to that for a while, see what happens. But yeah,
not bad.
Vargas was a big letdown for me.
Yeah, and they have like a history of like bringing those types of players who like just South Americans and then just
Bomb.
flop. And so if Velasco, bucks that trend, um, he seems very, very highly rated. So um, yeah, I guess we'll see. Time will tell. He's only 19,
For
so
sure.
could be more of a 2023 thing for like us thinking about this. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
he could
tough.
be maybe Jesus Ferreira becomes Pepe, and then Velasco becomes Jesus
Yeah,
Ferreira.
yeah. It's just the cycle. And then Paxton Pomykal. I think we talked about him last year a lot in preseason as well, and like didn't quite get fully healthy throughout the year, it seemed like. So never really. Last year was just a strange year overall, but never really found his
It very much
footing.
feels like
So
Paxton Pomykal's turned into the American Jack Wilshere.
yep, yeah.
That's what it feels like, doesn't
This is his year. This is
it?
his year.
Always
This
a
is his
joke.
year. We'll get there, right? Yeah. So I don't know if they put him as 10 and then Ferreira up top, that would be neat, but that could work. I don't know. It's,
Big time.
yeah,
They've got a lot of promise, Dallas, and again, because they've got such a good, vibrant youth academy, it's definitely a team worth paying attention to. Because who knows who could break through this year and gets a rookie card, for example, or someone that didn't get a card last year that gets a card this year. Because they're so academy focused, they will give chances to these kids, and if any of them are good, they'll play. I think the only team, as I'm looking at the table, the only team I still think we've even kind of touched on or mentioned is NYC. Don't think anyone really needs me to talk about them. And the Revs, who obviously stormed away with everything last
yep.
year. It looks like they've strengthened. I didn't know they brought in Altidore. They brought in Leggett. Turner's away mid-season. And I think when you asked me earlier on about who misses out of the playoffs, if they don't have a replacement for Turner and they're going half the season with Brad Knighton or somebody of that caliber, they could be in trouble.
Yeah. I don't think for what's worth they'll end up with Knighton. We love Knighton season, but I think there's so many good free agents or players that are currently. It seems like they have cap space if they sign Josie, who I imagine is not cheap. Um, if they pick up Omar Gonzalez, like it seems like a Bruce Arena like reunion tour almost.
That's what I was going to
Leggett,
say.
Gonzalez, Altidore. Um,
That's all those
and then
fans
yeah,
will say.
yeah. So this would be an interesting thing to do. Just go through Wikipedia, go through a list of goalkeepers Bruce Arena has coached. Maybe there's
Probably a good move.
yeah, because there's so many of those reunions that happen in MLS, and so um, actually I should probably do that. But no, obviously um, they are
Who was in goals?
still.
Who was in goals in his Galaxy team? It wasn't Bingham, was it?
Uh, it could have
Bruce
been.
Arena's Galaxy. I can't
I
remember who
don't
the keeper
know.
was.
Yeah, I
That
don't
would be
know. That's a good
interesting to find
question.
out if he's still playing.
Yeah,
I
but
personally thought, who was the goalkeeper that came in for Fry? He did really well, and I thought he would move somewhere as a number one.
yeah,
Was it
Cleveland,
Schaffelberg or something like that?
Cleveland,
Cleveland, that's who it was.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he did switch teams, but I think he's like a number two. Tom
Really?
Bogert tweet. What do we got here? Oh, just sorry. I've tweet notifications turned on for Tom Bogert. Shout out
Good
Tom.
move,
I don't know
I'd
why he
say.
would be listening, but hopefully one day he'll be listening. But yeah,
Listen,
back
hopefully
to
we'll see.
New England. Like the one thing that does worry me is Turner. Yeah, you can. I think there's talent floating around that can replace like 70% of him, maybe a bit less.
Yeah.
But Buxa, if Buxa goes to Europe in the summer, which it sounds like that's almost like given they turned down so many offers this window, that would worry me because then who plays up there? Like because if Josie fills in for that, that's a massive that's a downgrade, put it that way.
Yeah,
So
big time. I think, but when you told me that Josie had went there, that's what I thought. First of all, is it's an insurance policy for Buxa or
exactly.
Bo, one of them leaving.
Yep.
That makes sense. Why have Josie and those two guys? It's so top heavy.
Yep.
Um, it's a lot of people to keep happy and a lot of people to feed goals to. I don't know if Cleveland. It might be outdated, but I've got Cleveland as having been 29-minute appearance against Portland in a friendly like 10 days ago
Oh yeah, that let me see Seattle. Oh
for
yeah,
Seattle.
he's still number 2 there. Yep. Yep. So
Yeah, so Stephen Fry gets 60 minutes and Stephen Cleveland got the last 30 of the match. I don't know if that was injury related. I doubt it's probably just no, it was time substitutions. They changed the whole team after an hour.
yeah,
But he did so well, Stephen Cleveland as a number 2
he
when Fry
did.
was injured. You know, I thought he might have went somewhere.
And could still happen, right? It's
27 as
like
well.
the window is open, I
Yeah.
think, through mid-April. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, there's lots of time left for like I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think there will be more preseason injuries. And last year we had Milia go down, we had Hamid. So some of these situations probably going to happen again. As much as it's tough, but that's I think the reality of it. So lots to happen still.
Yeah, big time. In terms of goalkeepers, like I keep thinking, Richard, I've taken up enough of your time to like get back to your holiday, but then I see something else that I want to bring up, right? But so
This is holiday.
I've had, yeah, thank you. Glad you think so. um, so I have a Pablo Cisniga from last year. He goes to Charlotte, and I'm buzzing, thinking, right, okay, Cisniga's going to get a shot, and then they sign another like 2 goalkeepers. Like, so I've not got any idea who the Charlotte keeper is going to be, but I'm really hopeful it is Cisniga because I've got one. Of course, I'm very biased on that. But
Yeah,
do you have
have
much
to
insight
watch.
into that?
I'll
Fair
defer
play to you.
to just like this MLS depth chart. They have Kalina in front of him, but hard to say. Same thing in Dallas where they have Maurer still in front of Pace. Yeah, I think some of these are 50-50, and Montreal as well. What's the other one? There's one more like 50-50, like not Portland, but anyway, yeah. Oh, Toronto, of course.
Right.
Bono and Westberg.
Yeah. Steve Clark's
So
went to Houston Dynamo. Have they lost their Croatian goalkeeper then?
yeah, March
Again, Markic.
is. I don't think he has a team right now, so that could also like. What is he up to, Marco March?
Oh no,
Uh,
I said not in the squad for Houston in the last match. So the
no,
website I'm on doesn't know where he is.
he's just unattached currently, it seems. Just out of
Marco
contract.
Maric.
Transfer
On Sorare
marked.
it says he's on Sorare it says he's in Greece.
Oh, is that where he
Plays
ended up?
for
Athens.
Arturomis. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, same on transfer market. Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, so he's gone. So Steve Clark will be number 1 at Houston. If you're
Yep.
excited to have a goalkeeper that'll get 20 points a week.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry if anyone's a Houston
I
fan,
have
but
I have 2 Alec Cans, so just Cincinnati. Last year people were going crazy for the Cincinnati goalkeeper. And so I was like, yeah, Can
well,
gets
it was
traded, take a shot.
well. The
I
thing
don't
with
know.
Cincinnati last year is like I was hoping Titans had a super rare of him was going to come good, and it never happened. And they kept playing fucking the Dutch guy that they got from
Yeah,
LAFC, and he is hopeless, man. Like
Vermeer. Oh
if
my
you
God.
actually watch that guy, he should be retired. He cannot. If you ever watch that guy, I forget what his name is. I'm sure it's Pete or something, but
Vermeer.
it's a Dutch guy. Vermeer, that's him. He
Yeah.
cannot dive. Like if a shot is without arms, he cannot dive. He's so old, and he must have like arthritis in his hips or something. he can't dive, and he would like rush out to everything to try and close a striker down. It's like, hold your position and, you know, make yourself big, do all that goalkeeper stuff. Never done that. It was so frustrating. I've got Titon on the bench not doing anything, and now he's unattached. He's nowhere.
Yeah.
So Cincinnati goalkeepers get me fired up, Richard.
It seems to be everybody, you know, like was it for what's her name? Laura Fowler, like the Cincinnati beat writer. She was like, "Why do I have
Yeah.
so many people asking about our goalkeepers? This is new to me." And I think that's
It
like
was
she
me.
discovered Sorare, and I think it has a happy ending because, you know, a couple of people bought her subscription. I think it's Queen City Press, I believe, but so that's nice to see, you know,
Yep.
see some people
And
support the.
that's a great that's a great tip for anyone who again is getting into MLS for the first time, because America, and everyone will know this, America is such a vast country, huge population, tons of cities that are well built up and well versed in sports and all the rest of it. Every club has a cross section of domestic reporters that go to training, that know the manager, that interview the players. And if you are going to get close to a team, find their Twitter account, subscribe to their Substack, and then get into their DMs and
Yeah,
find out what's going on at training.
because I think some of them enjoy it. Like it's just such a change for them to have people from Europe
Big
all of a
time.
sudden ask about who's going to start or like how is this guy doing in training. Brings a lot of new eyes to
Yeah,
the league. And I have a list on Twitter
definitely.
who that kind of like collects all those beat writers plus a couple insiders. So I'll send it to you and maybe you can put it in the description or something. But it's quite
Oh, cool.
useful,
That'd be lovely.
I
Thank you,
found.
Richard.
Yeah, it's where I get all my info from. So
It all
it's
comes from
good.
somewhere, man. And
Yeah,
that's why
exactly.
you're on the run for breaking all your non-disclosure
Yeah,
agreements, you know.
I forgot to like credit some of the journalists. They're actually after me. So it's tough scenes out here, but so far so good.
Aye. Magic. I think that's pretty much me, Richard. I've went through the table. I don't think there's anything else I would want to yeah. Is there anything else I maybe jumped past, you thought, oh, actually, let me tell you about this, Quinny, or I'm excited about this guy you've not mentioned? Anything like that, Richard, you'd
Ooh,
throw into this?
I'm just I don't know, it's just really like if we compare this to last year, that's like my reference point right now. We are miles ahead in so many different ways, right? Like MLS is spending more, there's big players coming in, teams are getting better. CONCACAF Champions League, there's 5 teams that look like they have a decent chance at like, which is covered for Survey, by the way. You know,
Yep.
that's always fun. Just in terms of Surveyor too, like there's so much more MLS coverage, like people like French Twitter accounts, US Twitter accounts that follow Sorare or follow MLS in a Sorare context, which was kind of like the original goal that I had. Like, you know, when I made the whole Sorare USA account, I was like, more people should be informed about MLS. So I don't know. I just love how many people have like found the league, have now enjoyed it. We've got like our own inside jokes now. The MLS Discord is like a great like temple of like I don't want to say rationality, but it's no general. Let's put it that way. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just come such a long way, and there's like so much more to come this year. So I'm super excited. It's gonna be a great year. And then we have a World
Yeah.
Cup at the end of it to like, you know, cherry on top.
That's
So, you know,
that's a great point. You touched on earlier, but I just want to again highlight that for everyone. MLS is going to have very few midweeks this season. There's very few midweek fixtures. Almost everything's the weekend, so rotation pressure should be way down. Predictability should be up, and it's going to run right into the World Cup basically the season. So these guys will be useful for you for like, you know, it's going to start in March, ending basically November. So you're talking about 7 months of utility, just in the main division. Never mind playoffs, and then in the following year, Champions League situations and that sort of thing. But anyone who has ever spoke to me about MLS, and Richard, you'll definitely know this yourself, who's never watched it before, it's a very entertaining league. You know, it's not. There's some high quality players. There's some high quality football there. Don't get me wrong, but the whole league, top to bottom, is fun. You know,
it's good
it's a
fun.
fun league to follow.
Yeah. And then a lot of these guys will be like on the CONCACAF like World Cup teams. So you get,
Yep,
you know, it just keeps going. And so
that's it.
that's probably the next thing to do
Magic.
on the to-do list. Like check out the World Cup squads and kind of get scouting there. Maybe get ahead of the
For sure.
pack. I don't know. Probably some people already have like full on like SO5 teams for the World Cup built out right now. There's always somebody way
Definitely
ahead of you. So
I'm definitely try to get there myself, because I think with the World Cup, I think it'll be smart to have a World Cup squad of limiteds, because I think if they do any World Cup special weekly, they'll allow limiteds into that, so I think that's a nice wee insurance policy. If you fancy Brazil, you fancy Belgium, you
Yeah,
fancy Germany, whatever. Maybe I know the goalkeepers for all these teams would be mega dear, anyway, even at limited level. But all the same, if you are wanting a little footprint in that, you don't want to spend the earth. If you're a rare player, typically, I would imagine limiteds will offer you some utility in the World Cup.
I might.
Whether
That
it be,
that might be what I end up doing.
yeah.
You know,
Because when the World Cup comes, and again, we're going off on a totally different tangent, so I'll say this and then we'll finish, Richard, right? But when the World Cup comes, I expect Sorare to roll out the red carpet and for it to be festival time, giveaways,
exactly.
special weeklies. I expect them to go full hog, and you're going to want to have a participation in it of some sort. So I would definitely start thinking about it as early as you can. Everyone
It makes
involved.
sense to me in terms of like marketing. Like they have the cash. Like that could be the big stage, right? Like, hello
Yeah.
world. This
And
is.
I seen somebody, I think it was Butchered Lions on Twitter, had translated
Oh,
a French article. And the French article he translated, I don't know if this was the point in them sharing it, but one thing I noticed was they were interviewing, it was Nick or somebody at Sorare, and they were like that. The goal is 20, licensed the top 20 leagues, and then it was the top 20 national teams as well. That's now part of the line, the company line, the top 20 countries. And at the moment, we've only
wow.
got France, Germany, Belgium.
Yeah.
So there's still another 17 nations potentially to get licensed between now and the World Cup,
Is
potentially.
the US part of that? I'm afraid to ask. I don't want to know. I don't want to look it up.
It depends on their.
Right?
I think in FIFA rankings, you've got to be close to the top 20. And I think in terms of marketing. You've got to be top 10,
Oh yeah, that's for
um,
sure. But yeah, hopefully Canada makes it like top because they're exciting qualifying story. But that's lots of tangents here.
that's for the next time we get together, Richard, 100%. But I won't keep you on off your holiday anymore, mate. Listen, thanks very much. The link to Richard's Twitter and all the other stuff will be in the description of this video. Make sure you give him a follow. He is the man in the know, and he's going to stay on the run for us so he can keep breaking his non-disclosure agreements and give us the latest and greatest of info. Richard, thanks very much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Coney. That was excellent. Love the studio. Love the setup. Love the host. What more can you ask for?
Not much.
So yeah,
Richard, thanks very much, man. Legend.
thank you so much. Take care.